I'll just share a few thoughts with you, which have emerged largely through my own research, though I concur with Bulbul's argument that honor killings are everywhere around the world. They can be found in Europe, they can be found in different parts, different countries of the world, and it's something to do with the way women are perceived in different societies. It's something to do with women's sexuality, the control over their sexuality. But we must also at the same time learn from our own local and historical experiences to understand this rather horrific crime that is being perpetrated against women in recent times. If you ask me in terms of my own work, which some years ago I wrote a book on the Jats, believe me, when I was looking at these records, I could not find any reference to honor killing at that time, especially the colonial records. I mean, Professor Mridula Mukherjee is here. She's worked extensively on Punjab and agriculture, agrarian societies. Many of us were looking at the ways in which, peasants and different agrarian communities emerged in different parts of northern India. Nowhere did we actually at that point engage with the question of honor killing. Now the point is, in colonial records, we heard of sati, we heard of dowry, we heard of female infanticide, but the term honor killing somehow did not, we did not see that term, we did not engage with that term because it was not mentioned, it was not referred to in colonial writings. But of course you find references to female infanticide. Small infant females being killed. I mean, that also there are stories in Punjabi homes about small girl child being killed. That is one part of the story. But honor killing girls because they choose to marry some person, some male figure or out of their own choice, that is something we don't find any references to. But this is, and there are many love narratives, you have the love narrative of Laila Majnu, Sohini Mahiwal, transgressive love is there, it's talked about. But the instances of honor killing are few and far between. I mean, there are no references to that. And in fact, there are references to women being actually accepted in community after being purified in some way or the other, Ganga Jal se or whatever, that ki inko phir shuddhi kar do, inko, they will be part of the community. But, and they might be ostracized, but they would not be killed. However, this is not to say that there weren't any killings in the past. I'm not even making that proposition, because the point is, in recent years, the media reporting on honor killings has really come to the fore. There is a lot of reporting, there is a lot of reportage, and which helps us in fact make sense of this really horrific crime. So it is a complex story in the sense we cannot say there weren't honor killings in the past, because obviously women were not making perhaps those choices. There is also that dimension. Today women, whether in Haryana or in Western UP or in different parts of North India, they are certainly making choices. They are certainly making they are actually having a kind of an agency whereby they are asserting themselves. So the role and position and the question of their identity is also undergoing transformation. So honor killing is happening in a context where gender roles are also being redefined. Women's position in society has also altered, even though there are state agencies, there are political agencies which are out there to subjugate the status of women, and yet women's position, women's choice, women's own agency and their own identity, as it were, has undergone major transformation. So in that changing scenario where women are now making choices, there is a new confidence that is shaping their multiple identities, the way they project, they're talking, the way they are engaging with the opposite sex. So in this change scenario, a woman is making very important, crucial life choices. And in that context, obviously, this is something which is not acceptable, which is not actually tolerated by this male-dominated, caste-ridden North Indian society. I'm placing it in that larger context. So, Khap Panchayats, as they have been existing, they were Khap Panchayats in colonial times, and they were largely political organizations based not largely on their caste identity, but on their area identity. So Khap is a cluster of villages Khap is actually a cluster of villages, and in fact, according to that whole idea of cluster of villages, you would have an area identity. So Khap is in that area, one particular goth, one particular clan, a goth or gotra is a clan, would be dominant. Now in that larger sort of clan area, there would be other clans also. In that chain scenario, many women obviously are making this choice to choose a partner, from within that larger clan area. There would be other goths in that clan area also. It's not as if like there will be only one clan, but there's a larger clan area in which there would be other goths also. Thanks to the oppressive caste system that exists in these parts of the society, oppressive caste system and caste identity that exists, the women are forced to make choices. They are forced to say they are subjugated to a patriarchal and caste stricture, that they cannot marry within this particular clan area, which means that their own village, their own gaon and gawand, which is the neighboring villages also. So you cannot marry anybody within that particular village, even with any other person from any other goth. So all the men living in that village would be your brothers, and all the men living in the neighboring villages also would be your brothers. So this is the mindset in which this whole stricture is being imposed. Now if a woman makes a choice to marry within that village or outside that larger neighboring sort of setting, she would obviously be subjected to this horrific violence. The one major assertion by these Khap panchayats is that women cannot marry within their own goth. Now goth is not actually a goth or an identity which is confined to one clan, one caste grouping, subgrouping, but a goth is something which is an area identity. You cannot marry within your own goth. And the other stricture being that you cannot marry outside your own caste, and that would be the intercaste marriage, and both the possibilities are denied to women. And in that, men would also be victims of that violence. If men also transgress, they would be victims of violence. But the story is much more differentiated. When it comes to punishment, because that is where the Khap panchayat becomes very, very active, when it comes to meting out punishment to these poor victims, it is always the woman's family, it is always the girl's family that actually takes upon itself the task of restoring the honor of the community. So whether it's Manoj and Babli case, generally speaking, or any other case, it is the girl's family, her brothers, her father, who undertake this whole responsibility to kill both the girl and the boy. When they kill these helpless victims, the celebration of that violence, the way that violence is being celebrated in different parts of North India is also part of the story. Applauded. And these men who undertake this violence, who kill their own daughters or sisters, and who kill the helpless male victim also, they are celebrated as veers, as warriors. So this is the mindset that we are working with, that we have to engage with. And obviously this whole idea of celebrating the helpless victims for transgressing the community norms, or what we know as customary norms, is something that has a long history. In the early part of the 20th century, there is a case in North India where a Jat woman chooses to get married to a Muslim peasant, and both are hacked to death by the community members. It's there in the tales that you read about the rural kind of moral order that is emerging in the early part of the 20th century. And the person who commits this heinous crime is celebrated as a Jat Veer by the community leaders. So it has a long history of celebrating these murderers as Veers, as warriors. So we go with this kind of horrific form of violence, which is not a private form of violence, a very public display of violence. 1 year ago, there was a convention in Haryana. I had gone there, and I was told by friends like you who were sitting there, they said that, you know, in village Gharnavati, there was a love affair within that same village. And within that, the boy's head was cut and put outside his house by the members of the girl's family. This is the horrific violence that is going on. And the moment you think that there is silence in the national media about this, don't be mistaken. It's because these crimes are sometimes not reported in the press. So we have to be very careful. If we think that, you know, these days we are not hearing of honor killing, you know, crimes in the national media, that's because the reporting is also being kind of silenced. So we have to be very careful about the violence in the everyday that is being sanctioned by the Khap Panchayats and that is being sanctioned by the political leadership. That brings me to the second question. So Khap Panchayat, honor killing, this is about the control over women's sexuality, and the crime is usually perpetrated by the victim woman's own family, usually. And the second dimension is that this crime is also very horrific when a Jat woman chooses to marry a Dalit boy, you know, then I mean it's really, the instances of that kind of violence are so horrific that you can't even talk about them. It's so horrific. So the caste dimension and the kind of gender dimension of this violence is something that we need to talk about. Secondly, this is also about choice. This is also about love. This is also about desire, emotions and feelings which are completely silenced in these societies. Women cannot engage in love, women cannot love anyone, women have no desires, women have no choice. Women are all about honor. Women are honor. It's not women own honor, women are honor. Women are the honor of the community. So the moment they transgress the community norms, they don't have to be punished, they have to be killed. They have to be erased. They have to be eliminated from the landscape. And also this is a political project, as Manisha was saying. We know already that Khap Panchayats also work as vote banks. We know very well there are some people in this, some activists who are at the moment saying that honor killings have nothing to do with Khap Panchayats. You know, that's what they are saying at the moment. They say no, honor killings are about Sahagotra marriages where, you know, brother and sister cannot marry each other, and this is something which is sanctioned by Hindu tradition. The Chief Minister of Haryana is at the moment carrying out this project of Beti Bachao and Beti Padhao Andolan. At the same time, he is defending Khap Panchayats. In the same vein, they are not talking about honor killing, they are not talking about Khap Panchayats. They are saying yes, Khap Panchayats will undertake this whole project of Beti Bachao and Beti Padhao. That they are actually legitimizing violence perpetrated by these Khap Panchayat leaders. The Khap Panchayat leaders are unrelenting in their campaign against women in these parts of the country. And in fact, they want to change the Hindu Marriage Act and say that Sahagotra marriages should be considered illegal now. So we should be very careful about these political projects, you know, of the present government also, which are now trying, by the way, they are not the only one who are using Khap Panchayats as vote bank agencies or vote bank institutions. By promoting the Khap Panchayats, by giving into the Jat's demand for OBC status, they are actually, you know, silencing a very crucial crime that is going on in the everyday in these societies, and that is the crime of honor killing. So unless and until this mentality of the Khap Panchayat, and that's why I make a distinction between Khap Panchayat as an institution and Khap Panchayat as a mentality. Because in Bagpat, when they are saying women should not wear jeans and carry mobiles, it's coming from the same Khap Panchayat mindset. Many a time when we are doing our field work, they say, no, yahan to the Khap Panchayat didn't do anything here. You know, it is the family choice. You know, they wanted to kill this girl, they wanted to kill this boy because, you know, they had dishonored the family by falling in love. You know, the Khap Panchayat very silently, you know, sort of acts in these parts. It doesn't want to come to the fore. Nobody can touch them. Why? Because this is a political project, as Manisha also mentioned, because the politicians, the political leaders, I'm sorry to say, from across all political parties, they endorse these Khap Panchayats and they are seen as vote bank institutions. Let's be very clear what we are talking about. Do we want to fall back on these customary laws? or do we want to believe in constitutional laws? Which is the law that we want to basically believe in? Do we want to believe in a law which is coercive, which is regressive, which is a customary law, which has no legal standing? It's not recognized by any constitutional, language. Do we want to believe in that? Do we want these customary laws to be, I'm sorry, I'm talking about in the context of Khap Panchayats here. Do we want these customary laws sanctioned, endorsed, perpetuated by these Khap Panchayats, or do we want to believe in constitutional languages of freedom, right to choose your marriage partner, right to choose, right to exercise your freedom? Do we want to believe in that? Let's be clear about that. What do we want to believe in? So this political project of Khap Panchayat, of honor killing, of subjugating female sexuality, of perpetuating violence on people who choose to choose, I think this has to stop. And this will only stop unless and until we understand the larger politics behind it. This whole mentality of Khap Panchayat has to stop. And it's the same mentality which, I mean, you mentioned the case where, these two Dalit girls have been threatened with rape, in Bagpat. But there are voices which are emerging, which are emerging from within that society, and we have to listen to those voices. I mean, in Haryana, for example, even in Manoj Babli case, it was Manoj's mother who actually approached the lawyers. So obviously the initiatives are coming from there, and we have to extend our hand of cooperation, and we have to carry it forward. So, in fact, yesterday I was talking to somebody, he's a sarpanch in a particular village in Haryana, and I was talking to him about this. He says, there are no media reportings on honor killings at the moment. This is a very sinister move on the part of media at the moment. Nobody is talking about that. They are happening in people's homes. Girls are being forced to drink pesticide, and if they choose a marriage partner, if they choose their own partner, if they fall in love, even if they are seen to be talking to a boy, they are forced to consume pesticide. ये नया फिनोमिना आ गया है आजकल. हाँ, वो पिला दो उनको. He said, you all have to come out of your universities and talk to the people in these parts of the country. You have to have a new conversation, new language. Many a time we don't even have a language to engage with these kinds of crimes. We are sitting in Delhi, I'm sorry, and thanks to Shabnam that we are at least able to communicate, to talk, to have a conversation about this. Break this silence on this horrific crime. So honor killing is a murder. Let's call it a murder. Let's not sort of silence it and defend it under the name of Khap Panchayat, tradition, religion. It has nothing to do with these things. It's to do with plain murder.